Hello, welcome to this PayBix webinar. My name, as always, is Hans. I will be your host for the coming 30 minutes. And the subject of today is about an interesting journey towards a remote destination, the international payroll journey. And such a journey may come with a few surprises, so it's always good to prepare such a journey or to appeal to the support of an experienced guide. And so today we have the luxury of having such an experienced guide with us. So please say hello to Rudy. Hi, Rudy. How are you?
Hi, Hans. Very well, thank you.
Rudy has been in the multi-country payroll outsourcing world for a few decades now, so he can talk about this subject for hours. Today will only be 30 minutes. But before I give the floor to Rudy, allow me to briefly introduce PayBix to you. So we offer, one slide, we offer integrated payroll solutions for 30 European countries. And the core of our solutions is our payroll integration platform, Epix. And as you can see on the slide, our payroll integration platform connects with the payroll systems of our ICPs, the local payroll partners, for each of the 30 countries. And the communication between the two systems is a two-way communication. The arrow pointing upwards means that we capture the electronic data from each of our ICPs and turn their data into aggregated HR KPIs such as FTE, headcount, and labor cost reporting. But more importantly, the arrow pointing downwards, Epix allows you to manage your end-to-end payroll processes for those 30 European countries with only one platform to use. You do not longer need Excel sheets or Word documents or mails that go back and forth. Everything can be managed within Epix. So one interface to run payroll across all the 30 countries. And you can also manage your contingent workers should you have them. And we sign with our customers always one commercial template in which we try to harmonize as much as we can the pricing and service delivery details, and those are valid for all the 30 countries that are being served through this model. PayBix is the commercial spock throughout the whole relationship with the customer, but the day-to-day support is being delivered by our trusted ICPs. When you use Epix to its full extent, you have a few important benefits that come with the model. The first is, of course, the vendor management which will be much more efficient since you only have to negotiate one agreement that automatically will apply for all the other European countries. Secondly, you will, of course, have your overview across your full European workforce. So all the HR KPIs will be at your fingertips, whether they are core HR data KPIs or labor cost related HR KPIs. And last but not least, if you use Epix as your one and only input platform, you will have dramatically more efficient payroll processes than if you have to work with potentially 30 different payroll tools, one per country. Now we have created a few variants. You do not need to use Epix to its full extent if that's too soon for you. We have defined 3 offerings to allow maximum flexibility and to allow different degrees of integration. You could perfectly start with only a commercial integration, meaning that you have one agreement that covers the whole of Europe without already using the technology. But this way you are sure to have a future-proof choice of an ICP in a specific country. And then from aggregated insights onwards, you start using our technology. You see the bar of integration moving up to 60%. And in aggregated insights, you are sure to have integrated output across all your countries. So all the KPIs available at your fingertips. And then you can move all the way up to unified processing, where the bar of integration moves up to 100%. It is in this service offering that Epix will communicate in 2 ways with the local payroll system. As you can see in the top left corner, you can choose on a country-by-country basis between each of the 3 offerings, and that allows you maximum flexibility so that you can evolve towards an integrated situation at your own pace and according to the capability that you wish to assign to your international journey transformation. So far for the introduction, let me now give the floor to Rudy for the subject of today, the international payroll journey.
Thank you very much, Hans, for this nice introduction of PayBix and Epix. Before we kick off, just a quick heads up, but please don't forget to read the small print. And our marketing team has asked me to mention ChatGPT at least once, so that's been ticked off now, and we can start.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, Rudy, that the people who are in the call are free to drop their comments in or questions in the chat box. You find the chat box in the top right corner. I will keep an eye on the chat box and I will submit your questions to Rudy as we move through the webinar.
Thank you, Hans. So if you're new to multi-country payroll outsourcing, and maybe the first journey you're making, then the industry or the world of MCPO, which is then the abbreviation of multi-country payroll outsourcing, can be a bit obscure and even complex. So it's important that you educate yourself in a way before going on the journey, and there's multiple ways of doing that. But remember, the usable information is not so readily available. So you will find it, but sometimes it sits behind, or mostly it sits behind a paywall. And so you need to maybe pay a little bit before you get that information. But there's other ways, and we come back to that later. Need to understand also that providers, as any sales company, want to talk about their strengths and not so much about their weaknesses. So it's important to find out also what they're not so good at. Contracting for multi-country payroll outsourcing can be quite hefty. So here, consider to have a lawyer at standby to at least have a quick check review before you get your ink on the paper. Pricing in MCPO, as you can imagine, it's quite complex. So you can, and hazily, sometimes you have price per payslip, price per month, all kinds of pricings. What you really probably want to find out is to getting the total cost of ownership rather than just have a price per payslip or whatever, because the total cost of ownership indeed is something you can set off against your current TCO. When you talk to providers, you may want to ask them to get the full pricing table and the consultancy efforts, because just getting a slide with limited view is not going to be very helpful, and may not show all the one-off and recurring costs that you can incur for such a project. And last but not least, performance measurement is indeed important. You probably want to focus on the three most important KPIs in performance, which is accuracy, compliancy, and timeliness, as we all know in payroll. So don't let the payroll providers over-engineer this performance management and ask them just, okay, what is the trend on these three key performance metrics? Okay, with that, we can have a look at where to find information. As I said, try to inform yourself well. First is the most expensive one, but it's very comprehensive. You can buy an analyst report on the MCPO industry. As I said, there's a lot of players, so getting that information is interesting. You can find that with players, so analysts such as Everest, you have ISG, Nelson Hall, Nucleus Research, there's a number of them. But it comes at a cost of between 3,000 to 5,000 euros for such a report, and annually it's renewed. The moderately expensive solution, if you have some money to spend on getting informed, I would really recommend this one, is to hire an expert outsourcing advisor in the industry, in the MCPO industry, for just one day. And in this one day, you will learn more than doing a whole month of intense desktop research, believe me. And then there's cheaper ways. As I said, you can do desktop research. You're gonna have to spend some time to get to the bottom of it. You can find good information on websites of payroll associations such as the Global Payroll Association, HRO Today, Payroll.org, and the Shared Service and Outsourcing Network are a few of them. You can also make inquiries with MCPO providers. Just don't hesitate to pick up the phone, call an MCPO provider, and let yourself be informed. And you may see that there you can get some good advice for free. And last but not least, probably the least expensive and the one way to get to speak to somebody who's been there, done that, and bought a T-shirt, as I say, ask a peer if you can really use also their collateral that they have been gathering when they went through such an exercise. And also, by the way, MCPOs again can help you to get names of such companies who've done that. And I know from experience, that there was always people who are ready to help you with this. So don't be shy and just pick up the phone. Let's now have a look at the diversity that really exists in this international payroll sourcing. And in the first place, it's about who are actually the vendors, the providers of payroll outsourcing at an international scale. In-country providers, I've mentioned them because sometimes you will even find an in-country provider that also delivers for a few countries. Like, for instance, at the sub-region, Nordics, or the DACH region, the Germany, Austria, Switzerland, you can find them. Then there's payroll aggregators, such as Paybix. They are actually the linking pin that connects multiple ICPs. So what they do, they develop a homegrown application platform for input-output of payroll data and employee data. And they, in such a way that can serve a broad range of countries by actually partnering with in-country payroll providers who deliver great service. And then last but not least, you have the, business process outsourcers. They go a little bit beyond payroll services, and sometimes they also offer HR admin services. They mostly use in-house resources only with their own branches and subsidiaries and what have you. But now and then they also use ICPs where they don't have capability. Be aware that when you work with a BPO provider, they generally are organized very efficiently because they do high volumes, and you will find that their first line support sits with global shared service centers, sometimes at the other end of the world. So when you contact them, you may have to talk or speak in English to such a person, try to explain what it is that you need, and then get an answer back. Could take a while. They often leverage like HCM tools such as an SAP, Workday, and Oracle, which comes at quite sometimes high consultancy fees for the implementation because they need some customization and such. But sometimes also they have homegrown HCM software. In the case of ADP, for instance, they have built it in-house, or Ceridian. But again, comes at quite a high cost because these BPOs, next to the payroll revenue they make top revenue from system integration. When we look now at the graph to the left, then on the y-axis we see the average number of employees you have per country, and your average at the x-axis your average payroll expertise and capacity per country. So that's about your payroll professionals in-house, right? Why do I present it this way? Because when you want to create your mix of providers, which you could do, is you can then focus on which provider would deliver the most value in my case. So we see, for instance, the left bottom corner that you start with an ICP or an employee of record, which is not really a payroll provider, but you can include them in your payroll mix. For the lower volumes, for instance, in your total country and legal entity mix. And then it goes up. You have your regional aggregators, you have global aggregators, you have regional BPOs, global BPOs, and also even in-house could be part of your mix if you say, well, for my 5 biggest countries with really large groups, with countries with more than 5,000, 10,000 employees, sometimes you might consider actually to for those volumes to build your in-house applications and then do outsourcing for the other legal entities with less volumes. Okay, so going now to sweet spots of the payroll outsourcing provider, because it's very important to understand when are they going to give you real attention, or when are you going to be an important customer also. So let's look at that. And because it's so important, you first absolutely need to define your international payroll strategy for your go-to-market and for your international payroll service delivery mix. Why? Because that will allow you to address only those providers that are really in your remit. A few sourcing dimensions you could put in the mix, and there's a lot more, but a few I'm giving you. You can see large versus small countries, quite obvious. You can actually also make a difference between rules complex in view of payroll versus rules easy countries. And you can also look at we want to have decentralized versus centralized teams. There are a few sourcing dimensions. There are more. We can help you with that if you really want to start preparing on this strategy for your international payroll. Also, money is always important for everyone. Okay, for cost efficiency, you may consider using parameters such as, are you going to use an ERP, i.e. you have to count big dollars for such an implementation and for the technology versus a core HR or payroll system. And it comes with a second parameter, which is customization versus configuration. You can imagine, and we all know that implementing an ERP comes with lots more customization versus implementing a system that's really specific for the topic that you're addressing, in this case, payroll. And then you can use configuration more than customization. And another one, an important one is, if you want to go for non-standard integration, i.e. you expect that the provider will build you specific integrations at your measure, versus you are going to use standard integration that come with the payroll system or the ERP. Sometimes you also find some in ERP, mostly in core HR and payroll systems. So these are a few of the parameters that you can use. Then we go to the graph to the left, and we see on the y-axis, now we see the employee volume that you're actually going to include in your scope for international payroll. And on the x-axis, you have the geographic scope, being how many countries are you going to include in your scope. So we'll see actually in that respect that every category of payroll providers in view of international or even national have their sweet spot. For ICPs, it's going from one country to a few countries, and generally you find them from very small volumes of employees, even one, all the way up to 3,000, 4,000. Sometimes it's more, but in most cases it ends there. And then again, as we saw in the previous slide, we have all the different other categories: regional aggregators, regional BPOs, the global aggregators, and the global BPOs. And obviously, the more you go global, the more countries are addressed in the scope, and the higher the employee volume. Okay, so then let's look at the table, which actually gives a lot of information on what the provider categories actually can mean for you. I'm not going to go in full, the full extent through this. It will take us too long. But I just want to point you at a few of the elements here that you see in this table, because they make the biggest difference. First of all, preferred total employee. We saw that in the graph just before. Secondly, the preferred size of the legal entities. Every category has got a preference on do I go for small to medium versus the large to very large at the other end of the spectrum. The total cost of ownership, also already mentioned. It's often about ERP versus a real focused tool. You have the project duration, how long it's going to take actually to implement this international project. You have do you need a large project team versus a small project team internally? And so how many people do you need to put on the project? And we all know that people are scarce, so be careful on this one and really ask to the bottom. And a very important one, especially for payroll professionals who need to go fast, and payroll is a timely process. You need to do step by step and in time. So if you have a question, you want to reach your expert quite quickly. Be aware that some categories is not going to be direct line to the payroll experts. Not going to go more in detail. This is part also of the blog that we have written on this subject. You will find our website, and later on we'll come back to that where you can find it. Okay. So I want to show you with the next two examples. I want to show you how a mix can be built. A mix of providers, because our suggestion is, our advice is, don't necessarily go for the one single payroll provider. The global payroll BPOs and global payroll aggregators probably tell you that there's only one way and go global for all your countries and all your employees at one single provider. Well, what we say is that one size fits all may be all okay for a wool hat, but don't let the wool be pulled over your eyes by the global players, and be careful where you want to put your employees in the outsourcing mix. Okay, this is an example about an Italian company with 850 employees across 3 regions, Europe, APAC, and LATAM. And they have moderate to easy to moderately complex in-country payroll rules. Most of the time, we will talking about desk office workers here and less about plant industry people. So let's have a look what in this setup, in this configuration for this company, what are the possibilities from a strategy point of view? Basically, you have 2 big options. Either you go multi-provider or you go single provider. That's the start. But within multi-provider, you can still say, well, I got 2 potential ways to go. And the first one is you do a combination of payroll provider categories. For you, it doesn't really matter whether it's a BPO, whether it's an aggregator, it's an ICP, even an ER, doesn't matter. So in this respect, for this customer, what you could do is say, for Europe, I'm going to use a European payroll aggregator. I've got 11 countries. It's a nice size. And a European payroll aggregator, so a regional payroll aggregator, would fit nicely to deliver those services. But for the APAC and LATAM regions, I only have 2 countries. So why would I go for a regional payroll aggregator? I can do that as well directly with my ICPs, with 2 ICPs in those countries. Or even an employer of record. If you just are starting up in a country, you could use an employer of record. A bit more expensive, be careful, but it could be a temporary solution. Then the other possibility under multi-provider, you still have more than one provider, but you want to stay within the same categories. You have the same setup, and then you have an aggregation platform and all that. Well, in this case, you say, okay, we still go for European payroll aggregator, but we also use regional payroll aggregators for APAC and LATAM. So that's option A. Option B, obviously, you could go here for a global payroll aggregator, even global BPO, but they even go for the higher volumes. Global payroll aggregator may be just there, although they generally start from the 3,000 employee volume. So with 850, it might be that they are not really interested in your case. So this global payroll aggregator could then do all the 15 countries. But as already said, you may be with 850, maybe a little bit too small for them to respond to your case. Second example, now we're going much bigger, and all of a sudden we're going to 145,000 people globally. Japanese company, Japan headquartered. ClickWeight Global is a company. They have 90,000 employees in Japan alone, and then all over the world in the other regions as well. Also in APAC region itself, they have much more employees. We do the same thing, 2 options, same as before, but now we're looking at bigger volumes, so it's going to look a bit different. If we look first at the combination of payroll provider categories, we probably want to go with only with BPOs, global BPOs, and with regional aggregators in this case. The BPOs, as I already mentioned, they go for the bigger volumes, and also their tools and their processes and their services are much more oriented versus very high volumes. They want to go for efficiency. So here we're looking at all the 10 countries with more than 1,000 we put in the scope for the global BPO, but we also put in there the 13 APAC countries and the 5 European countries with more than 250. But then we supplement that with 3 regional aggregators, a European for the 12 European countries with less than 250, LATAM 8 countries less than 250, and Middle East Africa, another 20 countries with less than 250. Or we want a single category of payroll providers, in this case only BPOs, business process outsourcers. You have one global, and you use the global one for the very high volumes with Japan, APAC, and Europe as your 3 regions and headquarters that you want to include there, and you use regional BPOs for Latin, North America. And it's just an example. You can go, the mix can be really various, but we focus now on these only. And then option B, same as before, single provider strategy. And here, of course, a global BPO will find your case very juicy, and they will definitely respond to your RFI or RFP or both. But be aware here that the full rollout implementation for, we're talking about 68 countries, 145,000 employees, can be quite lengthy. And the reason is the global BPOs, they want to use one project team that they will lead from one region to another. They want to stay as close as possible to the same project team, at least the leadership, the heads of the project or the program. And therefore, it could take, it's one region after the other. So if your chief HR officer or chief CFO is, wants to make it much faster, then consider to go for your option A, I would say. So with this, in summary, what we can say is, you want to prepare well, inform yourself diligently, and avoid that you pack all kinds of providers in your backpack, because many of them may not even respond to you, and it could become a bit frustrating, to be honest. And you travel light when you know where to go, when you know how to get there, and you know what to pack. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rudy. Now, maybe one question. You mentioned in one of your first slides that providers tend to be cautious about their shortcomings, or tend to hide their shortcomings. What would you call our shortcomings? And since we are a transparent company, let's reveal our shortcomings, if there are any, of course.
Yeah, well, I can think of one at the top of my head. I would say that when you're a regional aggregator, of course, you're working with multiple ICPs, one in each country normally. If you do an RFP on that, you will include one ICP per country. And there can be some variations, of course, between the ICPs. You can imagine that in every country, every ICP will have its own way. And so for us, it's very important that we really bring the, let's say, the managed payroll service agreement as standard as possible across all the ICPs, so that our customer is not confronted with all kinds of different service levels, different pricing, different technology, probably the most important one, and you want to have for your customer. So where we now are currently, we have succeeded most of the countries to bring that all together, and we're working on the same with a few countries where we still need to do that, but it's going to happen. So today we see that a little bit as a shortcoming, I would say.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. That brings us to the end of the webinar. Please check out our website, as mentioned by Rudy. It's under the About Us, and then the Resources tab, where you can check our different blog articles, and the one on the international payroll journey is there as well. And then some promotion about our upcoming live demo of June the 13th, that's Thursday, where we'll reveal the latest version of Epix. So we will announce a major software release. So make sure to check this out on our website as well. We will also publish an event on LinkedIn that allows you to register for this event. So, and before we really wrap up the call, please take 1 minute to fill in our questionnaire. Only 6 questions to answer. Those are very helpful to us to organize future events. So please take a minute to fill in those questions. So for now, thanks for watching, and we hope to see you again in one of our future events. Thank you. Bye-bye.